What's going on, everybody? This is Andre here, filling in for Kevin, and in this video, I'm going to be giving you my first impressions of the Xiaomi Redmi 12. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now before we actually get to the phone itself, let's take a look at what comes in the box. So as you can see up here, Redmi 12. Now in the box, in this compartment here, we got a case and a quick start guide. So definitely nice to see this phone does come with a case, because at this point in 2023, this really isn't something you see every day. And then on the back of this part, we got a SIM card removal tool. And then in the box itself, we got a charging cable and a wall adapter. But moving on to the phone itself, with the Xiaomi Redmi 12, despite being more of an affordable entry-level device, we are getting a pretty nice display here. With this phone, we're getting a really large 6.79-inch 90Hz IPS LCD display with a 1080p resolution, a PPI of 396, and a 20.5:9 aspect ratio. So in general, if you are looking for a phone that has a really nice display, this will be a great choice. At 6.79 inches, this definitely is a larger phone. So if you're going to be doing a lot of maybe reading, for example, or browsing the web or using social media, or you're just going to be on your phone a bit more, things are of course going to show up larger and be easier to see. With the 20.5:9 aspect ratio, we're also getting a taller, more narrow form factor. So if you're doing stuff like browsing the web, for example, you'll be able to fit a good amount of content on the screen without having to scroll too much. And if you're doing something in landscape mode, like watching videos, for example, a form factor like this is going to give you a much more immersive cinematic experience. And on top of this, the bezels are also relatively thin too, and this helps make it look a bit more sleek and modern. In addition to the size and dimensions, the image quality is also really good too. With a 1080p resolution, things are going to be nice and sharp and crisp. So again, if you're doing stuff like watching videos or really anything where the image quality is a bit more important, you will get a great experience here. And then with the 90Hz refresh rate, the movement on the screen is a bit faster and smoother, making the phone feel a bit more premium to use. And in general, I also do want to point out that despite being an IPS LCD and not like an AMOLED or a Super AMOLED or an OLED, the display is still pretty bright. The colors look nice, and the viewing angles are pretty decent too. So overall, again, if you're looking for a more affordable phone that still has a really nice display, you definitely won't be disappointed here. Now for the storage, with the Xiaomi Redmi 12, this phone has 256GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion, but also keep in mind there is another variant that has 128, but again, the phone in my hand does have 256. So in general, this is plenty of storage, especially for a more affordable device like this. So if you're someone who has maybe a lot of apps, for example, or photos and videos, or whatever else you might be putting on your phone, having this much storage will definitely be great for you. And again, it does support microSD card expansion too, so even if you do fill up the internal storage, you can always use a microSD card to offload stuff like photos and videos. So if storage is important to you, then this phone will definitely be a great choice. For security features, the Xiaomi Redmi 12 does have Face Unlock and a fingerprint scanner right here on the power key. So definitely a great spot for a fingerprint scanner. Really can't go wrong with having it on the power key. But real quick, let's give it a try. There we go. One more time. And there we go. So as you can see, real fast and responsive, no issues at all. And again, remember, this phone does have Face Unlock too. So if you want to use that instead, you always can. Now taking a look at the camera here, with the Xiaomi Redmi 12, up front, we got a real nice looking hole punch design for the selfie camera. This camera is 8 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a triple camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide camera, and a 2 megapixel macro camera. So definitely a great camera setup here. As far as features go, this phone has pretty much everything, including an ultra wide camera and a macro camera, so definitely glad to see that. And not only this, but with a 50 megapixel main camera, you can expect to get some pretty good photo quality here. Now, considering this is a first impressions video, I haven't actually used the camera yet, but considering again it is 50 megapixels, for what it is, I do think the photo quality here will be pretty good. And then also keep in mind for video, this phone does have a max recording quality of 1080p in both the rear and front cameras. So unfortunately no 4K here, but considering this is more of an entry-level device, not very many phones like this can record 4K videos anyway, so not really a surprise. Now for the RAM and processor, with the Xiaomi Redmi 12, we're getting 8GB of RAM with the MediaTek Helio G88 processor. Now also keep in mind, this phone does have another variant that has 4GB, but again, the phone in my hand does have 8. So in general, in terms of performance and overall speed, maybe not the best processor, but far from the worst too. So on one hand, if you're going to be on your phone a lot, maybe you're just someone who's constantly using your phone for stuff like heavy social media use, or maybe more demanding activities like high performance mobile gaming. For that kind of use, you probably will want to get something a bit faster because in general, despite not being super slow, this phone is really not that fast. So yeah, if you are more of a heavy user, you might want to consider getting something else. But I would say for a more casual light user, for more basic activities like light web browsing and social media, watching the occasional video every now and then, and maybe some light mobile gaming. For that kind of use, despite again not being particularly fast, I do think it will at least get the job done. So if your needs are really not that complex, this phone will be plenty fast enough for you. Now I ran a benchmark test on this phone using Geekbench 6, and here are the results I got. So what I recommend doing is running this test on your current phone, and then comparing your results to these, and that's going to give you a better idea of whether or not this phone will be a performance upgrade for you. Because of course, depending on what you're coming from, it may or may not actually be. On one hand, if you're coming from maybe an older but higher end device, chances are this will be quite a downgrade. But on the other hand, if you're coming from maybe another entry-level phone, then in that case, this phone could be a pretty good upgrade. So it really just depends. But in general, again, I feel like for more basic casual use, despite being far from the fastest phone out there, for a light user, it will get the job done perfectly fine. Now for the battery, the Xiaomi Redmi 12 has a 5000 mAh battery that supports 18-watt fast charging, so definitely a great battery here. With a 5000 mAh battery, you can expect to get great battery life and longevity, so throughout the day if you still have to use your phone for a decent amount of time, but maybe you're not always around a charger, this phone will be perfectly fine for that kind of use. And then down the road as the battery degrades, which of course all batteries do, a 5000 mAh battery like this is going to last quite a bit longer than say a 3 or 4000 mAh battery. So if you like to get one phone and keep it for a longer time without having to replace it, the Xiaomi Redmi 12 will be great for that too. And then with 18-watt fast charging, on one hand it's not the fastest fast charging out there, but at the same time, for a more affordable device, I do think it is pretty good. So in general, as long as you do have an 18-watt charger, for most people, I do think the charging speed will be good enough. Now for the software, the Redmi 12 has Android 13 with MIUI 14.0.7, so definitely glad to see we're getting the latest version of Android here, and while of course whether or not MIUI is good or not is kind of based on personal preference, in my experience with this phone so far, things do work really well. I haven't had any lagging, slowdowns, or really any kind of performance issues, so overall I really have no complaints here. As far as other features go, the Xiaomi Redmi 12 does not have wireless charging, which probably isn't much of a surprise considering this is not a flagship phone. But in case you haven't gotten a new phone for a while and you're expecting, at this point in 2023, all phones to have it, just keep in mind, while a small handful of more entry-level phones does have wireless charging, the vast majority of non-flagship phones don't. But on the bright side, this phone does have NFC, and in case you don't know what it is, NFC is the main technology behind Tap and Pay, so if you like to use that feature, keep in mind, you can use it with this phone no problem. Now taking a look at the overall design itself, like I said before, the phone does have pretty thin bezels, and again, I really like this hole punch design for the selfie camera. It definitely makes the phone look a bit more sleek and modern, and despite having more of a glossy finish that kind of picks up fingerprints a bit, I would say overall, it is a pretty nice looking phone. The materials also feel of decent quality. On one hand, the phone is made entirely of plastic, which considering it is more of an entry-level phone, this probably won't come as a surprise, but despite being plastic, things still feel decent. There's a pretty good amount of weight to it, so overall, despite being more affordable, the phone definitely doesn't feel cheap. Now on the left here, we got the slot for the SIM card and the microSD card. On the bottom, we got the microphone, USB-C port, and the speaker. On the right, we got the power key, which once again is the fingerprint scanner too. Volume down, volume up. On the top, we got the noise cancelling microphone and a 3.5mm headphone jack. And then finally on the back, we got the cameras, flash, and some branding down here. So again, in general, aside from the glossy back, which I'm really not a huge fan of, I do think everything else on the phone looks pretty nice, and the build quality is pretty good too. But in conclusion, my overall first impressions of the Xiaomi Redmi 12. In general, for what it is, I do think we are looking at a pretty decent phone here. Like I said before, I wasn't super impressed by the performance, but considering it is more of an affordable entry-level phone that's not really meant for super heavy activity, I feel like for what it is still acceptable, and again, I personally haven't had any performance issues at all, so I really can't complain too much. Aside from that, I am happy to see we're getting a really nice camera setup here, a great display for consuming content, plenty of storage, and really good software too. So in general, if you're looking for an affordable entry-level phone, I do think the Xiaomi Redmi 12 is definitely worth considering. Now for more information about pricing and availability, definitely check out the link in the video description because this does change from time to time. And stay tuned because I will be making lots of other videos about this phone in the future. But again, this is Andre here filling in for Kevin. This is the Xiaomi Redmi 12, and as always, I will see you in the next video.